himself. This could win him the Tour of Britain. Oh my goodness me, look at that. Oh, he's left the rest for dead. Here they come into the closing stages. Those wheelie legs, he asks for a little more power. Oh, it was so close.
Welcome to Milton Keynes and stage 2 of the Tour of Britain. Well, yesterday the Tour took us collectively by the hand and led us through the streets of London, and today we head for the green grass of the home counties, and the real race can get underway. Who knows? The sun may even shine. Well, yesterday it didn't, but as central London turned into a bike-sized particle accelerator, the crowds were rewarded with a classic bunch sprint.
Pataki that's in the front. Pataki takes it.
Alessandro Pataki then in yellow, but maybe only keeping it warm for his big name teammate.
In this tour, many climb, and Di Luca in this moment is strong. Possible good race.
And talking of Danilo Di Luca, his aggression over the closing laps of yesterday's stage were followed by an official warning for throwing off his rain jacket without due care and attention. Not the only rider yesterday to fall foul of the commissaires. Ploughman Craven's Alex Hyam was disqualified late last night for getting a tow after his handlebars had worked loose. Doubly bitter, as this was his last ever race and he comes from Newbury. So Alessandro Pataki leads the general classification, now down to 95 riders of course, but the bunch finished as one, and so the time gaps are negligible. Now, while we're on the subject of Alessandro Pataki, it is worth perhaps just clearing up the events of his recent past. Yesterday's stage win came in his first race since completing a ban. In the Giro d'Italia in 2007, he tested non-negative for the presence of salbutamol. It's basically one of these, a common asthma remedy. Now, non-negative essentially means he's taken too much, and although the Italian Cycling Federation permitted him to continue riding, in May this year he was banned completely, and that ban has just come to an end. So, Paul Manning, essentially what happened to Pataki was that he made a mistake, and cycling the way it is, strict liability, etc., a mistake you can't make.
This is it. Every athlete needs to be aware of the fact that anything they ingest, you know, it's their responsibility at the end of the day, and that's how the authorities are going to view it. So, you know, in my career, it was just, I didn't really take common cold remedy. You had to avoid everything, and if you did need something, you had to go to your doctor first. He'd check it was okay with the relevant authorities, and then then you'd be okay to take it. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the rider. Okay, so it'd be wrong to put Pataki in the bracket as some of the sort of more notorious names in cycling. Certainly, as you said, I think it's just a mistake. He was probably suffering in a race and needed to use his inhaler that extra time that pushed him over the limits.
Okay, so much for today's man in yellow. Yesterday we spoke to last year's Tour winner about his chances of successfully defending his title. Winning here last year was just the start. This July, Fayou almost elevated himself into sainthood status back home in France by doing what every Frenchman dreams of, pulling on the maillot jaune, albeit for one day only.
Disons que le Tour de France est la course la plus médiatisée, donc voilà, automatiquement.
The Tour de France is the most famous race in the world. Wearing the jersey changed things for the team. He showed the world just how good a team Agrituble can be. For me, it's something I cherish. Now the public treat me in a different way and cheer me like they never have before.
His start to defending this year's Tour of Britain was a solid, if unspectacular, 15th place in yesterday's sprint finish. Maybe a sign that the peloton is wise to his capacity.
I finished 15th last year in the prologue. Let's hope we get the same overall result. This team is looking to win.
Romain Fayou there on his attempts to become the first Tour of Britain winner to clinch 2 in a row. Now, Rachel Phillips has been out and about looking at the parts of the course that the riders never even notice.
Yes, thanks, Ned. Well, while yourself and Paul will decrypt all the action from today's stage, I'll be at Bletchley Park, the place often credited with bringing World War II to an end. Well, this lies 7 kilometres south of today's starting point, and while the cyclists won't be worried about tackling any codes, one thing they will have to crack is the first Category 2 climb of the Tour of Britain, which lies ahead, and we'll also be taking a look at that and what they're likely to encounter there.
If they can avoid colliding with any concrete cows, then stage 2 will roll through 90 miles of home counties from Milton Keynes through Aylesbury, passing to the east of Oxford before hopping over the M4 for a city centre finish in Newbury. 3 sprints and a climb early on are followed by the tricky Category 2 Streatley Hill out to the Thames Valley and another polka dot teaser 10 miles from the finish, which if the bunch is still together will be lightning quick. Well, that's Newbury. This is Milton Keynes, and the riders have to get from A to B, don't they, Paul? You've had a good old look at today's route. What do you make of it?
Yeah, 145 kilometre stage today. It's not overly long, but there's certainly some challenges along the way. Initially, in the first half of the race, there's 3 sprint preems. Yep. So that's a big deal for people who are challenging for the overall.
Yeah, time bonuses attached to them.
Time bonuses, totally. We've got a British jersey wearer, Christian House. He'll be happy to defend that today. I think it's a positive thing for that team. Early on, there's only the 1 preem, and at 2/3 distance, the Streatley Hill, the first, second climb, short, sharp shock for everybody, and maybe that'll be a springboard for people who want to push on for the GC. So I think they're the important points of today's stage.
Will we see, if De Luca, for example, is serious about winning the yellow jersey, will we see him make a big move today, or do you think those guys will keep their powder dry?
I think they'll look to keep themselves in contention today. That climb could be important over the Chilterns, but I don't think the weather conditions, there's no strong wind today. They just want to make sure they're in the mix for the following days.
OK, let's find out exactly what's going to happen and join our commentary team, Hugh Porter and Anthony McCrossan.
Warm and sunny conditions for stage 2 from Milton Keynes to Newbury, 90 miles of undulating countryside. 95 riders taking the start, with Alessandro Patacchi holding a scant advantage over his nearest rivals. But almost all the field are within touching distance of the yellow jersey. So today we can expect a day of high action. The route certainly lends itself to that. Well, this is the neutralised section, which just gives the riders an opportunity to stretch the legs before they get out of Milton Keynes. And it's there when the red and white checkered flag will be pulled in to let the action unfold. Matthew Goss here from CSC Saxo, man that won a stage in the Tour of Britain last year in Wolverhampton. Now they're thinking of the route ahead, and spirits are high in the early stages, as you can see.
We can see here that the riders looking quite relaxed this morning. I think they're pleased that they expected that the weather conditions would be a lot worse than they are for this start. You'll notice, Hugh, Roman Fayou sitting at the back in wearing number 1 for the Agritubel team. Let's maybe pick out some of the riders. There's Christian House, the king of the mountains, in the red and white polka dots, the Eon jersey.
And Christian House will be out to add more points to his tally. And it'll also be a day when Ian Stannard, the big fella, 21 years of age from Milton Keynes, will be out to impress. That local fella who came through the Mobile Youth Challenge scheme and has now developed into a fine international, a European team pursuit champion. So Stannard may be one of the men that could go on the attack today.
The riders going through kilometre 0 at Neath Hill, and the race will now be underway. And there's a slight tailwind here, so I'm sure we're going to see some initial attacks. And here at the front, Roman Fayou just testing the water a little bit, seeing whether there is an attack prepared to form already. And MTN Enegade also quite vigilant in this attack.
So 3 riders linking together here in the very early stages of the stage and keen to get on with it. We're expecting a lot of attacks to form today. The team of Columbia there in the blue. They've got a lot of strong cards to play, and that was Steve Cummings we caught a brief glimpse of. But these are the 3 at the moment that are forming, and more riders coming up. Jay Johnson is the man that we're looking at here.
Well, there is Jay Thompson of the MTN Enegade team, and he's now being joined by a couple of other riders, just glancing around to see whether the peloton is prepared to let these riders go. Number 122 in the green is Stephen Gallagher of the Anpost team, the Sean Kelly Academy, and Gallagher looking pretty strong.
We're barely 3 miles into the race and we've got a quintet that are trying to go clear, but the action is coming thick and fast from the peloton behind, and the junction is being made here. The whole field back together, and one of the AIS Young Australians is the man responsible for bringing the bunch up.
This AIS team, the South Australia team, are very interested in winning this race. On the start sign on this morning, they said that they are keen not just to win the stages but to go for the overall win in this year's Tour of Britain. Just noticeable that Dan Martin, the Irish champion, is also in the mix. Now another attack at the front, and it looks like it's the LPR team. I think this is Ermetti going on the attack now, just testing the legs.
So LPR that have come here with a powerful team, Pataki in there and Danilo De Luca, and they are here to really impress. But at the moment it is Agritabel, who of course are looking after the interest of last year's winner Romain Feuilleux, that are on the head of the main field. Swinging around a little bit here as another break begins to develop, and once again it's LPR that's going clear, and that looks like Big Ian Stannard to me as well, of the Great Britain team in second position. 3 more trying to get rid of the presence of the main bunch.
Well, look at the speed of these riders as they whistle their way through this roundabout. Magnificent roads to be racing out of Milton Keynes on. Nice and wide. They lend themselves to good attacking and some very, very fast moves. Ian Stannard, 3 miles into the race, really powering on at the front of this peloton.
So Stannard, this youngster, as I said earlier, I felt would be out to impress today, he's beginning to wind the pace up heavily at the front. He's got a good rider going with him as well, because this is Ermetti, one of the Italians on the LPR team, and they had a fantastic day in London with Pataki in yellow. Now out on the course is Rachel Phillips, who I think has got a few secrets to tell us.
Welcome to Bletchley Park, the home of Britain's code-breaking during the Second World War. In tranquil grounds, 7 kilometres south of today's starting point, is the place often credited with bringing World War II to an end. Well, during the 1940s, almost 10,000 men and women worked around the clock in these wooden huts, desperately trying to break the Nazi code. And eventually they did it. The Enigma code, generated by the Germans on a machine similar to this, was cracked. All blueprints were destroyed, and the scholars turned code-breakers were banned from telling anyone about their work. So Kelsey, tell us a bit about Bletchley Park today.
Bletchley Park, once Britain's best kept secret, is now a museum and heritage site open daily to visitors, where people can come and see where 9,500 people worked during World War II in absolute secrecy.
And just how incredible was it that that code was broken?
The odds of breaking the Enigma code were 158 million to 1.
Wow.
The Germans believed it was unbreakable, and the people here at Bletchley Park were breaking into those codes on a daily basis.
Well, I think I'll need just a few more hours to crack this one myself, but fortunately we have you and Anthony to decode all of today's talking points. Don't go away.
Well, welcome back, and the action is still unfolding here thick and fast. Let me tell you, the efforts of Ian Stannard and Ermetti have been wiped away, and now we've got another break developing here, and there are 5 riders moving clear. We've got Berge from Agritabel, Evans from MTN, Severe from Rock Racing, Downing, who's on the Candy TV Pinarello team, and Danilo De Luca from LPR.
Well, this is an interesting combination of riders. They tacked after 12 miles of racing, and they are now starting to build a fairly sizable advantage. Interesting in here that Kevin Evans is a mountain bike rider who met David George when they rode the Cape Epic, and is now on the MTN Renegade team. Of course, David George is the leader of the team, that MTN team in the yellow.
We're looking there at Russell Downing, concentrating hard. What a season he's had, Downing. He has been the man of the British racing scene, second in the Tour of Ireland, so he comes here in good form. There's Danilo De Luca, who certainly is here to try and impress in front of the British fans for the first time, seeing him racing in Great Britain. And also looking good is Severe, right on the front now for Rock Racing.
Well, we're heading now to the Winslow Sprint, and we will see who takes the seconds, because of course there are 3 seconds, 2 seconds and 1 second on the line.
Very, very useful to pick up here, because remember, Alessandro Patacchi is leading the race overall, but his advantage is very, very slight. And De Luca on the left beginning to gather himself here, looking as though he might try and sweep up the maximum points in the contest and take the 3 seconds on the line. De Luca in the grey on our extreme right, and then in the Rock Racing kit right in the middle there is Severe.
Well, Severe in the Rock Racing kit, you may notice from yesterday they have completely changed their colours. Yesterday they were wearing green, today they're wearing red, white and blue, and they've said that's to celebrate the fact that they are in the Tour of Britain.
Absolutely fantastic, fashion conscious team, aren't they? So these 5 riders continuing now to find a good rhythm at the head of the field, and this could be quite a key move of the stage. They're all from different teams and eager to get on with it, and De Luca on the left swings over again to surrender the pace setting to Severe, but now De Luca beginning to lift the pace here. He wants to get the 3 points in this sprint contest and of course get the time bonus. Coming up to the line, it's tight on the line. Oh my goodness me, De Luca just takes it. Very close there on the line, but De Luca was first over to get the 5 points, and second was Severe for 3. Downing got the 2 and Berge the 1. But the most important thing there, Anthony, is that De Luca got the 3 second bonus.
Looks to me like De Luca's on a second hunt at the moment. He is 9 seconds down on the general classification. That now puts him 6 seconds back, and if De Luca carries on riding like this, he may well put himself into the yellow jersey by the end of the day. On to some of the climbs now, Hugh.
Yes, it's undulating countryside here, and it's going to suit 1 or 2 of these riders, particularly the man tapping the rhythm out on the front. That's Oscar Severe, and also of course De Luca, who won that Tour of Italy, as I said earlier. He's also a winner of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, so this kind of countryside will certainly not pose any threats to him. Good working group.
This terrain is suiting the 30-year-old at the front from MTN, the mountain biker, as he taps out a nice rhythm. We're heading up now towards the line, and Russell Downing going for it here.
Downing then challenging strongly for the points in the Eon King of the Mountains. Well, Downing's left the rest behind, it's no problem at all. So the Yorkshireman is over the line here at Oving to pick up maximum points in the Eon King of the Mountains contest. Evans was second, and Berge just behind came in third, and Danilo De Luca, who is very, very effervescent today, got the 1 point for fourth.
That team, that British team, showing the amount of interest in British cycling, bringing Candy TV in as a sponsor. But we're now moving on to the next sprint of the day.
Second sprint. This is the sprint at Aylesbury, and it's De Luca again. Look at this, he's full of firepower today. De Luca comes up to the line, and once again he's first over, and Downing in the wake of De Luca second. Severe was third, and Berge of Agritabel fourth. So De Luca picks up another 3 seconds. This is certainly beginning to build.
Of course, Aylesbury, a new cycling demonstration town, and Cycling England supporting the amount of investment into cycling in England. It's fantastic.
And David Miller, who's riding, and he's back in the peloton at the moment. He's riding on home ground because he went actually to Aylesbury Grammar School, as we get a wonderful aerial shot of Aylesbury. The group continuing to work, but the peloton are now beginning to close them down. They had a lead of over a minute at one time, but now the peloton have got the back of the leading group in sight.
The gap at Oving was 1 minute and 41 seconds, but De Luca has now sat up. He's managed to get enough seconds. We are left with 4 riders, and it's not going to be long before the cavalry picks up the 4 riders who've been in the breakaway from the 12-mile mark. We are approaching 28 miles of racing covered.
So early in the stage, but it really has been full of action. But it looks very much to me now as though these 4 are going to be swept up, and then the whole field will be back together. And we've still got 60 miles of racing to decide who's going to win stage 2 into Newbury.
Well, it's magnificent racing roads, and these riders are averaging over 28 miles an hour today as Downing looks across at his breakaway companions. And if we panned back with a helicopter, I think we would see the peloton just a few seconds behind them. Downing on the back, and the rider from the MTN team at the front, Kevin Evans. Oscar Sevilla, of course, has performed well in major races like the Tour de France and, of course, the Vuelta a España, and he's thriving being in this Tour of Britain.
Well, the lead is tenuous now, but they're still trying to stay clear. Although I feel that De Luca was spoken to, they are wired for sound, and the manager will have said, look, the break is over, just come back and take it easy in the peloton, and this aerial shot will confirm the distance. Well, it's still a handy little distance that they are clear.
Well, there is De Luca back in the peloton. He's relaxing after those earlier efforts. There's the King of the Mountains, Christian House, and he is enjoying being in that jersey, looking to defend it all the way to Liverpool. This team is strong, and they look like now they are about to be caught.
So this is the junction being made, and the remaining two from the breakaway are caught, and the whole field are back together. There are still two climbs to come on this stage, so Christian House is still in a position to add to his points tally and keep the Eon King of the Mountains jersey on his shoulders. But now it is the LPR team that are coming to the front and beginning to take charge.
It's magnificent to see so many of the schools out at the side of the road on this year's Tour of Britain, cheering on the riders. They are very, very excited about seeing the stars of the world of cycling. And of course, many of them have been at home during the summer holidays watching the British riders win so many gold medals in the Beijing Olympics, and they're out here cheering on what are now their heroes.
And those two riders that are in the main field that won gold medals at the Beijing Olympics are Bradley Wiggins and Geraint Thomas on different teams. Wiggins riding for Colombia, and of course Geraint Thomas riding for Barlow World. So a slight lull in the action for the first time since the flag dropped when they left Milton Keynes this morning, and they're all beginning to stretch their legs a little bit and wait for the next attack. And this is coming from Great Britain. Well, Great Britain's manager is Max Schiandri, a former professional and a bronze medal winner in the Olympic Games, and he's obviously formulated a game plan today. He wants to see those Union Jack jerseys out at the front of the field, and this is Ian Stannard, who was away early in the stage, going away again.
Well, this Great Britain team are extremely motivated, just bumping over some of the little holes in the road there. But Ian Stannard looking around to see whether the peloton are going to let him go. Of course, yesterday, the men for Great Britain were Tom Southam, who was in the breakaway all day, Rob Hales, who ended up taking today the green jersey onto the roads between Milton Keynes and Newbury. Stannard looking strong.
He is very, very strong indeed. He could do with some company if he wants to try and be in with a shout of winning the stage, but he is a man that'll really tackle this distance with determination. Once Stannard is out of sight, they say in cycling, out of sight, out of mind, he will revel in the challenge of trying to get to Newbury first. So Ian Stannard of Great Britain now leading the field. Welcome back, and you're looking at Ian Stannard. His lead at one time was over 4 minutes. There's 56 kilometres to go, and it's beginning to tumble now because the field are certainly taking up the chase. He went over the top of the final sprint of the day at Tame to get the maximum points. Second was Rodriguez of Rock Racing. De Luca was third from LPR, and Chris Sutton of Garmin Chipotle was fourth. But that lead now being eroded by the peloton that is being led by the LPR team.
Well, we're approaching 50 kilometres to go for Ian Stannard, and this effort is sure to start to show very soon indeed. Stannard still looking strong, but the LPR team, with Danilo De Luca in second place, really starting to bore down on Ian Stannard.
There's evidence of the Barlow World squad and near the front as well, and Stannard beginning to look a little bit laboured as he's on the foot slopes of the second category ascent of Streatley, and this is going to be a tough, stern test. Big crowd has gathered here on this long climb, and Ian Stannard has done a sterling job for the Great Britain team, but for how much longer will he be given his freedom?
Well, once he goes over the top of this climb, it's a very technical descent, and I think he's going to enjoy this one because it is reminiscent of some of his local roads, I'm sure, in Belgium. A technical descent and a fair amount of grit, actually, on that descent off the top of Streatley, so he may well be able to eke out a little bit more of an advantage being on his own and plunging through those corners.
Well, it's a courageous, valiant effort by Stannard, but for how much longer? The field now can see the lone rider ahead, and that will bring them all back together.
This is the climb of Streatley. It's a tough little rise, this one.
It's a second category affair. 6 points to the first rider over the top. Stannard is going to get the 6 points, but it will be interesting to see the developments behind, because Christian House is the man in the Eon King of the Mountains jersey, and he will be out to try and get the 5 by leading the bunch over. Stannard now looking a little laboured as he levers that big body up the climb here.
Stannard spends most of his time based in Belgium. He rides for the Lambeau Credit team when he is over there, now back riding for Great Britain in this race. So some of these roads I'm sure will be reminiscent of some of the roads that he trains on around Belgium. Look at this magnificent area.
Glorious, glorious countryside as we get an aerial view of the peloton stretching out, and it is the grey coloured jerseys of the Italian team LPR leading the bunch. But there you can see the graphic tells us exactly where we are on the stage, working our way ever nearer towards Newbury.
Many local fans out on this climb, ready to cheer on the riders in the Tour of Britain, but he is really trying to power this gear over and finding it exceptionally difficult. Those legs are starting to hurt.
This is where, of course, the riders who have the light physiques can dance up the climbs and make the big men suffer. But always we have present at the front the LPR team looking after the interests of the yellow jersey, Pataki.
You'll notice Pataki to the left-hand side of the screen in the yellow jersey. He put some extra clothing on just after the start today. He was finding it a little bit chilly, but Stannard's lead on this climb is tumbling incredibly quickly. Look at this. This man is at his absolute limit, but it has been a great day for the Great Britain rider. I don't think he's going to get to Newbury now on his own. Earlier on, when he had that gap of over 4 minutes, it looked like he could be a lone victor in Newbury, but that's not going to happen.
And this is obviously beginning to hurt Stannard at the front. Barlow World in the red and yellow on the extreme left, also contributing to the pace as they chip away all the time at this advantage that is tumbling, and Stannard is going to get some company shortly. He should top the climb clear, but it's likely to be less than a minute when he does finally crest the peak here of this second category affair.
Of course, this man is a member of the Olympic Academy programme, one of those levels of British cycling that looks to find the talent to bring them all the way through to win gold medals, hopefully in 2012. And at 21 years of age, this man has got a long and illustrious career in front of him. The fans urging him to the top of Streatley.
Through the sea of faces to the cacophony of applause, the big fella here urging his tired body to the summit of the climb. Well, he will pick up the maximum points, but he's going to get swept up on the tricky descent. There's a big battle going on behind, I can tell you, because Christian House, who is the leader of the Eon King of the Mountains, wants more points. But here is the big fella who has conquered the climb and picked up the maximum points available.
Well, he takes his glasses off, ready for this descent, clicks his way through the gears. He just wants to get over the peak of the climb and settle himself down, let his heart rate recover and see if he can eke out a little bit more of a lead. In the centre of the picture, the killer, Daniela De Luca, looks across, and here is Christian House in the King of the Mountains jersey.
Christian House, the man from Canterbury, now beginning to prepare to take the second place. That will give him valuable points. He will get 5 here for the runner-up spot, and that will reinforce his stranglehold on the King of the Mountains crown. Here he comes. Now these are the riders gathering themselves for the rest of the points at stake, and this is Christian House. Christian House speeding away here to pick up a very useful 5 points to increase his tally and keep a firm hold on this competition. House over, well and truly clear of the rest.
Of course, last year Christian House rode for the Navigators team in this race, but there's confirmation of the result. Stannard taking the points ahead of House. David George figuring for the first time.
And Tom Southern picking up 3 points as well, another rider on the Great Britain team who of course has been doing a good job at the head of the main field to support Ian Stannard. But Stannard now sitting up here, he's capitulated, he looks back and the field are about to sweep him up, and inevitably it is the colour of grey that is at the head of the main bunch in this narrow road. And the colour grey, of course, tells us that it is the team of LPR that are going to make the junction first, and that means we're all back together now, ready for the final run-in to Newbury.
46 miles in the lead for Ian Stannard today. A valiant effort, very well done, Ian. And here now are the LPR team at the front, but Rock Racing on the left-hand side.
Well, I think Stannard will have done himself a power of good to get the Combativity Award for the most aggressive rider. Well, we're nearing the 10-kilometre sign, and that means the action is really beginning to liven up. This is an attack by Serge Powles of the Top Sport Flandrian team. He's taken over from his teammate Verschillen. They're going down the road one by one as they try to sweep away for a stage victory. I can tidy up the result of the last climb at Shefford Park. It was Ben Swift of the Great Britain team that picked up 4 points. Christian House is over second to get 3, and that means that he has increased his lead in the Eon King of the Mountains title.
Well, Serge Powles, I remember last year, was an early wearer of the Eon King of the Mountains jersey, but Top Sport Vlaanderen clearly looking to try and break away and race into Newbury. Magnificent countryside in this area, and just to give you an idea, the run into Newbury quite technical. You've got some tight right hand bends and left hand corners in towards the finish, and it narrows quite considerably just on the entrance to Newbury. 10 kilometres to the finish.
And here come the field again. They're going to sweep up Powell's, and that means once again they're all back together. Another big attack forming here, and it really is top speed racing now as they head on towards Newbury.
Well, it's full gas at the front of this peloton right now, and I was wondering, Hugh, if that was the familiar frame of Daniela De Luca yet again, looking to go on the attack. Constant attacking at the front of the peloton. Is anyone going to get away, or are we looking to see a big bunch sprint?
That's the way it looks, doesn't it? So this would be an opportunity for the sprinters once again to profit from lead-outs to try and clinch a stage victory. Under the trees here, the field beginning to stretch out, and the speed is very, very high indeed. Thinning out right on the head here, which is always an indication that the pressure is being applied. But this brace of riders that have just gone fractionally clear are being once again pulled back.
There are riders suffering at the back of this peloton right now. It is not the place to be, because this run into Newbury, because it does narrow so much on the run in, it could cause some crashes, and let's hope that doesn't happen. But on the right hand side of the peloton, another attack. That looked like a move from Garmin Chipotle, trying to go across to a little trio of riders, but through the trees. Let's see who's on the attack. In fact, it's the Ploughman Craven. They had 7 punctures yesterday, and they are looking to try and have a better day on these roads.
Well, I also got a glimpse of one of the Candy TV Pinarello riders as well that looked a little bit like Russell Downing. And Russell Downing, I think this is that's coming up to the rider from Ploughman Craven. We'll tidy that up when we get a closer shot of it, but of course he could look after the interests of the elder statesman of the team, Malcolm Elliott, who's still got a lot of firepower in his legs and could be a man to look out for in that final charge for the line. I don't think it is Downing, actually.
Well, it looks like the British riders are inspired by the fantastic crowd we've had out along the route from Milton Keynes to Newbury. But it's another attack at the front from the Top Sport Vlaanderen team. Again, they are looking to try and break the string. Looking down, that looks like Christophe van der Walle who's going on the attack.
Good call, good call. That is van der Walle that's trying to go away. So they've been firing them down consistently, haven't they, to try and get clear. 23 years of age, Van der Walle, and he is the 3rd, maybe the 4th rider from that team that has tried to get clear in the closing stages. The advantage, well, it's about 150 metres, but I think that the race in the angry mood it's in now is not going to let Van der Walle go.
Well, of course, all of the Top Sport Vlaanderen team finished safely in the peloton yesterday. All of them are at 10 seconds. So if they can just nip a few seconds back, then they could be looking at moving high up in the general classification. Nice and relaxed, this rider, as he cruises along the road, just trying to break away.
He's determined. He's got that big gear here turning, and he's working hard, looking to try and get that extra little bit of speed out. They'll be touching in excess of 30 miles per hour on the final run-in now, and that's why it is so difficult to get clear on your own. It's almost impossible to keep a big bunch at bay, and you can see now how it's travelling, really moving along quickly.
Well, these roads are made for churning a huge gear, and of course as we approach Newbury, down towards all the canals that run through this lovely little town, then we are going to be descending into Newbury, so of course the pace is going to increase all the time. But on the right hand side of the screen, looks to me like again it is the team of CSC with Anders Lund in the jersey there at the front.
So the breakaway rider has again been pulled back. Status quo, we're all back together, and the big bunch sprint is beginning to look very much like the prospect for the big crowd in Newbury. Now that all these riders will have done their homework by looking at the Bible, as it's called, that's issued to all the teams, that tells you exactly how the stages unfold, and there is always a map of what the finish is like, and I can tell you there's a very sharp turn that will line them up for the finishing funnel. They'll be aware of this, so the big sprinters will try to get as near to the head of the field as possible so they're out of danger.
Chris Anker Sorensen at the front, a stage winner in the Giro d'Italia. You may remember, if you're a big fan of cycling, his magnificent victory salute when he reeled himself across the finish line, and Sorensen is in full flight at the front, gasping in the oxygen. Anders Lund, his teammate in the wheel, Stuart O'Grady, the former winner of the Paris-Roubaix, and Lund, who lives in Lucca in Italy, enjoying this Tour of Britain.
So team CSC Saxo Bank taking charge at the head of the field here. They've got young Johnny Bellis from the Isle of Man, who is guesting on the team and he's likely to be signed up as a full professional next year. And Bellis was third in the World Under-23 Championships last year, a fine sprinter. He could be a man that could figure strongly, but one of their really strong men in the closing stages is Matthew Goss. Goss won the third stage into Wolverhampton last year, and Goss will be in with a serious shout here if he's anywhere near the front.
Well, Newbury is now on the horizon, and Great Britain take control of the front of the peloton. There in the middle of the picture, Tom Southam, who featured in the breakaway yesterday around London. He said before the start that he was going to try and do even better today. Anders Lund looks around yet again, but it's Great Britain. Maybe they're going to try and bring home the victory for Rob Hales. Hales was bitterly disappointed at not beating the great Alessandro Petacchi yesterday.
Yeah, he just got himself tangled up in the wheels actually. I think he got the speed to match the Italian, but the Italian got a better line to beat him in the final sprint. So let's see. Great Britain have had a fantastic day today. Max Schiandri, the manager, has obviously instructed them on how he wanted them to ride, and they have ridden a textbook stage. Ian Stannard out at the head of affairs, gaining a lot of publicity for the team, and of course Rob Hales, he's tucked in the wheels there, looking for the possibility of going one better than the London stage to seal victory. But look at this. This is a classic example now of the high quality tempo as the pace is being ramped up significantly.
The lead-out trains of all the various teams are being organised. What you're seeing here is the various teams trying to take control of the front of the peloton. They have got 3 or 4 riders leading out their big sprinter. They know that it is going to be a bunch sprint in the finish, and now it's Garmin Chipotle on the front with Magnus Backstedt, who was led out by this team yesterday. Now looking like they are going to lead out Julian Dean and Chris Sutton. Through these obstacles, there is a huge crowd waiting for them in Newbury.
Well, Chris Sutton is the young Australian who packs a severe punch in the closing 200 metres, but not a stronger finishing punch as the Kiwi Julian Dean. Dean is a very, very powerful finisher, a well-respected sprinter, second overall in this Tour of Britain back in 2004. And you're absolutely right, Anthony, it is the team here of Garmin Chipotle that are turning the screw at the front. A big Magnus Backstead who towers over all the field is in second wheel.
Well, Julian Dean, of course, remember he wore the green jersey, or won the green jersey of the Tour of Britain in the year that he finished second. So he's always performed well in the Tour of Britain, and he is now looking for a stage win.
We're into the streets now of Newbury. They will loop round Victoria Park after coming down the high street, and it's all about who's got the courage now and the nerve to hold the good line.
Through that tight right-hander, and now they line themselves up to go straight through Newbury over these bumps, and a huge crowd awaiting them and cheering them on. They are inside the last 3 kilometres of this stage.
And it's still Garmin Chipotle that are right on the head of the field here, trying to stop anybody else from ruining the party. But other riders, you can see, are trying to squeeze through. Oh, it's narrowing down significantly. Now they come round this next left-hander, and the field are beginning to break slightly, and now the right-hander. The finish is getting ever nearer now. It's still Garmin Chipotle right on the front, and who is he going to be when they get up to the line? He's getting ever nearer now. Big Magnus Backstead is there.
This is not for the faint-hearted, and there's a split in the peloton here. I wonder whether there's been a problem running through the first few corners in Newbury, but look at this. Backstead, he's a massive powerhouse rider, and he is stamping on the pedals. The pace is about 35-40 miles an hour.
And Matthew Goss is also up in the mix here. 1 kilometre to go, and I can tell you the sprinters are massing near the front. I caught a glimpse of Roger Hammond as well, the British rider who's riding on the Columbia team. There he is in the blue, just at the back of the train there. Hammond, the former World Junior Cyclo-Cross champion, has won 2 stages in the Tour of Britain before. What a story that would be if he could seal the victory. Now then, this is the back of the peloton, and you can see it's fragmenting significantly because there's been a crash, and the field are in 2 parts at the moment as they take the left-hander, and now they're heading on towards the finish, and it's still Magnus Backstead who swings over, and now the sprinters are beginning to lick their lips now and really work at the final stages.
Well, it looks now like they're setting themselves up for the finish line, and who's going to get this one? The sprinters know they're going to swoop round this left-hand bend and set themselves up for the line.
Here it is, the charge for the line. Who's going to get this one? Matthew Goss is right up there, going well, riding for the CSC Saxo Bank team. The Australian is being challenged by Julian Dean of New Zealand, and Chris Sutton's in the mix, but it looks like Goss is going to take it. Goss takes it. What a fantastic sprint. He timed it to absolute perfection.
Goss then over the line first, but a chaotic run-in had blown holes in the race behind him, and as the bunch came over in instalments, Ian Stannard stopped to tell his story of the day.
I went and I was like hoping 1 or 2 others would come with me. Might have been a bit more successful then. It was like really windy, just headwind most of the day, and I was just getting a kick in from it. So it was pretty tough, so yeah. Thought at one point maybe, but then we went up the second GPM, and yeah, it was so steep I just struggled up it the whole way really, and then it was over from there really.
Behind him, the riders still staggered in. An acrobatic crash involving Martin Garrida as well as Oscar Savia inside the final 2K fractured the race, but fortunately no one's collarbones. It all meant though that almost everyone was awarded the same time by the commissaires. So 3 Brits in the top 10 on today's stage finish, including in 9th place Malcolm Elliott at 47, the oldest rider in the race. The yellow jersey of Pataki came in 6th. But it was young Aussie Matthew Goss who finished first, and in time-honoured tradition thanked his teammates.
I'm certainly stoked to get a win, and stoked to get a win for the team. They did an awesome job for me the last 2 days. I made a few mistakes yesterday, and today I tried to make it up to them, and it was good.
King of the Mountains is still Christian House. The 8 points he picked up en route today, keeping him temporarily well clear of last year's winner Ben Swift, but there are plenty on offer tomorrow. Danilo De Luca continued his prominent showing by winning 2 of the 3 sprints, and that leapfrogged him over yesterday's leader Anders Lund. Ian Stannard has battled his way into 5th. Alessandro Pataki then finishing in 6th and holding on to the points jersey, and incidentally that keeps him in yellow too. His percussive Italian name then top of the pile, but level on time with Matt Goss. Teammate Danilo De Luca is just 2 seconds down now, and then there are 85 riders all within 30 seconds. Bradley Wiggins got detached today, he's now at 56 seconds, Only Victor Hugo Peña has really lost touch, having stopped to give Oscar Sevilla a new bike and then, by all accounts, getting lost on his way to the finish line. So a good stage win there for Matt Goss, and Alessandro Patacchi still being handed out more jerseys than he can actually wear. But if you look at the sharp end of the GC, Paul, not a great deal changed today, did it?
No, as you rightly said, Alessandro Patacchi keeping himself in pole position wearing the yellow jersey. But it's interesting to see his teammate Danilo De Luca.
Yep.
He's struck out early on, getting in a little move of 5 men, taking a couple of time bonuses to, maybe give himself a chance to sort of use tomorrow as a launch pad to, look towards his GC ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, today's stage running was actually quite a scrappy affair in the end, wasn't it? But the story of the day, when we reflect on it, will probably be Ian Stannard's solo effort.
Yeah, that's what some of the guys were saying, as hard running, but Ian was the standout rider for today, a young British rider with a great future ahead of him, and a growing reputation on the continent from some of his performance in the classics early in the year.
Yeah, well, if he didn't shoot his bolt today, maybe tomorrow would have been a stage for him, but tomorrow is going to be tough, and it's going to be potentially decisive.
Yeah, some of those exposed hills, the Mile Hill, it's about 90 odd kilometres through tomorrow's stage. That'll be pretty tough. Weather conditions, we're not quite sure what the riders are going to get. It's not too bad now, but it's pretty tough wind out there.
Yeah, as you say, there's a storm brewing, and as Paul quite rightly says, tomorrow's stage is in the West Country from Chard to Burnham-on-Sea, and if those weather forecasters are on their money, it's going to be wet, wild, windy, and it could do an awful lot of damage to this race. See you then.